All right, we are on our last two chapters of Magic Treehouse book number 16, Hour of the Olympics. And remember, the last thing that happened was Annie really wanted to go see the Olympics, but girls weren't allowed. So she dressed up as a soldier. But then she forgot she wasn't allowed when she got very excited, and all of her soldier gear came off, and then two large guards arrested her. They didn't know what to do, so they called for the ancient story to help them. And that's where we are now. Let's see what happens next. Chapter 9, Fly Away Home. The white horse stopped at the low wall by the edge of the track. "He's come for us," said Annie. The guards stared in awe at the horse. Annie broke free and dashed over to Jack. He grabbed her hand, and they ran to the horse. The guards shouted and started after them, but they were too late. Jack and Annie had already climbed over the wall and into the waiting chariot. "Go, go, go!" Annie cried to the huge white horse. The horse reared and pawed the air. The crowd stepped back from the wall. The guards were frozen. Jack looked up to where Plato was now standing. Plato smiled and waved at him. Then the white horse leaped forward, pulling the chariot behind him. Jack couldn't even wave back to Plato. All he could do was hold on tight as the horse galloped beside the Olympic racers. Jack bounced up and down. Dust and sand got in his eyes. He squeezed them shut and crouched down in the chariot. He didn't know where they were going, but it didn't matter. The white horse was in charge. Jack heard the thundering noise of the racing horses and chariots. He heard the screaming crowd. He felt sand blowing in his face and the hard bumping and rattling of the chariot. Suddenly, he was thrown backward. He heard a swoosh of wind, then silence. "Oh, wow," said Annie. Jack opened his eyes. All he saw was blue sky. He pushed his glasses into place and looked around. "Help!" he cried. The white horse had grown giant feathery wings and was pulling their chariot into the sky. Jack gripped the railing of the chariot and held on for his life. "To the treehouse!" shouted Annie. Below, the Olympic crowd watched in silence. The winged horse left the games and flew over the temple of Zeus, over the statue of Nike, over the sacred olive tree and the gymnasium. On they went, over the poet's house, the Greek theater, and the field of white tents. Finally, the winged horse coasted to the ground near the olive grove. The wheels of the chariot bumped onto the grass. Then slowly, slowly they came to a stop. Jack and Annie stepped out of the chariot. Jack's legs were so wobbly he could hardly walk. Annie rushed to the horse and stroked his neck. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack patted the horse's long white neck too. "Thanks," he said. "That was the best ride of my life." The horse snorted and pawed the ground. "Come on, Annie. We have to go before they find us," said Jack. "But I don't want to leave him," said Annie. "He's the most beautiful horse in the whole world." Her eyes filled with tears. "We have to," said Jack. The horse put his head down and touched Annie's forehead with his soft nose. Then he gave her a gentle push toward the treehouse. Annie sniffed, but started walking. Jack took her hand as they walked through the olive grove to the rope ladder of the treehouse. "You go first," Jack said. Annie started up the ladder. Jack followed. When they were inside, Annie hurried to the window. Jack grabbed the Pennsylvania book. He pointed to a picture of the Frog Creek woods and said, "I wish—" "Look," said Annie. Jack looked out the window. The horse had spread his great feathery wings. He was rising from the field. The white horse flew high into the blue Olympian sky. Then he disappeared behind the clouds. "Bye," called Annie. A tear rolled down her cheek. Jack pointed again at the Pennsylvania book. "I wish we could go there," he said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse began to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. They're all here. Jack opened his eyes. He couldn't see anything. He felt his clothes. He was wearing his t-shirt and jeans again. The leather bag had turned back into his backpack. "Hello," said Morgan Le Fay. Her voice came from the corner of the treehouse. "Hi," said Annie. "Did you have a good journey?" asked Morgan. "I did," said Jack, "but girls can't do anything fun in ancient Greece." "I did one fun thing," Annie said wistfully. "I rode in a chariot pulled by a flying horse." "That must have been wonderful," said Morgan. "You are very lucky to be bringing me the story of Pegasus." "Who?" said Jack. "Pegasus," said Morgan. "He's the great white winged horse in Greek mythology." "Oh, yeah," said Jack. "I think I've heard of him." He felt in his backpack and found the scroll. He gave it to Morgan. He could still barely see her in the dark. "It was written by Anonymous," said Annie. "I know," said Morgan. "Many talented women used that name in the past. Her story will be a great addition to my Camelot library." "Plato helped us find it," said Jack. "Ah, my good friend Plato," said Morgan. "He was one of the greatest thinkers who ever lived." "And Pegasus was the greatest horse," said Annie. She sighed. "I just wish I could see him again." "You can," Morgan said softly. "He's here right now." "Pegasus?" cried Annie. "Oh boy." Annie turned on the flashlight and used it to find her way down the rope ladder. Jack grabbed his backpack and followed her. When they were both standing on the ground, Annie shined her flashlight at the dark trees. "Pegasus," she said. "Where are you?" "Pegasus?" "Turn off your flashlight, Annie," said Morgan. She was looking down from the treehouse window. Annie switched off the light. "In the night, you can see all the story characters that saved you on your last 4 missions," said Morgan. "They are all here. Hercules and the Silk Weaver, Sarf, the serpent monster, and Pegasus." Jack pushed his glasses into place and studied the dark woods. "Where are they, Morgan?" cried Annie. "Where's Pegasus?" "Look hard," said Morgan. "I can't see him," said Annie. "Yes, you can," said Morgan. "The old stories are always with us. We are never alone." "Has Morgan gone crazy?" Jack wondered. "Look up," said Morgan. "Your friends are in the night sky. They are stars." "Stars?" whispered Jack. He stared at the shimmering field of tiny stars overhead. "Hercules is a constellation," said Morgan. "The Romans imagined him kneeling in the sky, holding a club over his head." Morgan waved her finger at the sky. For a moment, Jack saw a living, breathing Hercules outlined by stars. "And there's the Silk Weaver with her beloved cowherd," said Morgan. "The ancient Chinese believed that they were the 2 stars on either side of the Milky Way." Morgan waved her hand again. The lovely Silk Weaver was outlined in the heavens. "And long ago the Irish believed the Milky Way itself was the serpent monster Sarf," said Morgan. Morgan waved her hand. A giant serpent glittered through the sky. "And the ancient Greeks named one of their constellations Pegasus," said Morgan. She waved her hand again, and the white horse's head, wings, and galloping legs glowed in the sky. "I see him," said Annie. Then she whispered, "I love you, Pegasus." Jack thought he saw the stars move as if Pegasus were rearing back in the sky. After a breathless moment of silence, Morgan lowered her arm. The night sky became a field of tiny glittering stars again. "You have done amazing work as master librarian," said Morgan. "I would trust you with any important mission." "Does that mean we're going on more trips?" said Jack. "Indeed it does," said Morgan. "Many more." Jack smiled with relief. "When is our next mission?" asked Annie. "As soon as I need your help, I will send for you," said Morgan. "Go home now and rest." "Goodbye," said Annie. "Goodbye," said Jack. "Farewell," said Morgan. There was a sudden rushing of wind, then a blur of blinding light, and Morgan Le Fay and the magic treehouse vanished. The night was still. "Home?" asked Annie. "Sure," said Jack. As they walked between the trees, the Frog Creek woods were pitch black. Jack couldn't see a thing, but he didn't ask Annie to turn on the flashlight. For once, he wasn't worried about finding his way home. He felt as if someone or something was leading him through the woods. Morgan's words came back to him. The old stories are always with us. We are never alone. Jack looked up at the stars again. They were beginning to fade in the growing light of the morning, but he thought he could hear the beating of giant wings somewhere high above. That's a great picture of Pegasus. And that is the end of Magic Treehouse book number 16. The next one we'll read is book 17, and it's called Tonight on the Titanic. Have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we'll read our next book on Monday.